Good morning, everyone. I am Teacher Jarrett, and today we are going to be reading about hummingbirds' wings. Okay, so this week we have been learning about animals and their characteristics, right? Or traits that make them special. And so today we will be reading about a hummingbird's wings. The story is retold by Vita Jimenez, and it's illustrated by Jason Parker. At the end of the story, we will read another short story for a paired read that is called What is a Hummingbird? Okay? All right, let's go to the next page. So the genre of this story is a folktale. And remember, genre is a word to describe it's a word to describe the type of story. So genre explains what type of story this is. So sometimes it's nonfiction, sometimes it's fiction. This is folktale. So our essential question this week is, how do animals' bodies help them? The name of our story is Hummingbird's Wings, retold by Vita Jimenez, illustrated by Jason Parker. So our story today has 2 chapters. Chapter 1 is A Special Bird, and that begins on page 2. Chapter 2 is Helping Hummingbird, and that begins on page 7. Then we have our paired read, which is called What is a Hummingbird? And that begins on page 13. And then our last part of our lesson today is Focus on Genre, and that begins on page 16. So let's go to our story now. Chapter 1, A Special Bird. Long ago, there was a great spirit. He looked after every animal in the kingdom. One day, he created a tiny bird. The bird was plain looking, but Great Spirit gave her wings that were very special. So this is the Great Spirit. And so he was looking after all the animals, but then he created a very special bird. The bird could flap her wings faster than any other bird. She could fly backwards or stay in one spot. When she did this, her wings made the most splendid humming sound. That is why Great Spirit named her Hummingbird. So here is the hummingbird, and her wings could go back or forward, and the hummingbird could stay in one place, or could fly forward or backwards. There are not many birds that can fly backwards. Almost all birds can only fly forwards. As she got older, Hummingbird looked at the birds around her. Some had red feathers and some had blue feathers. Some even had yellow feathers. At first, this made Hummingbird sad. "Why do I have such plain feathers?" she said. The other birds said, "You may be plain, but you make music when you fly." This made Hummingbird feel good. So we can see all the other birds have different colors, and the hummingbird is just a plain brownish color. So Hummingbird wants to be colorful like the other birds. But the other birds told her they think it is very cool and very special that the hummingbird can make music when she flies. Then she realized she is special, right? One day, Hummingbird met another bird. They decided to get married. But there was a problem. Hummingbird didn't have money to buy a wedding dress. She was so sad that she stopped flying. This made the other birds sad too. They missed her humming sound. So she wanted to get married but had no money to buy a pretty dress because her feathers were so plain, right? So she was sad and she didn't fly anymore. "Let's help our friend," said Spider. "What can we do?" asked the bird with the red feathers. "Let's all think hard," said Spider. "Together we can come up with a plan." All the animals nodded. They wanted Hummingbird to be happy. They wanted her to fly and hum again. Okay, now helping Hummingbird. The bird with the red feathers had a good idea. "Hummingbird can use my feathers for a necklace," he said. He plucked off 8 feathers and tied them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All the birds plucked off feathers. Bluebird helped carry them to the tailor. The tailor could make a very special gown with the feathers. So there's all different colored feathers, and they went to the tailor. He looks like a little mouse. Spider said, "I can spin silk for a delicate veil." Then she helped the tailor with the gown. Finally, everything was ready. Hummingbird's friends rushed to give her their gifts. When it was time for the wedding, all the animals gathered around. Honeybee brought honey and nectar. The trees and bushes brought their flowers and fruits. The butterflies fluttered around gaily. So we can see the bee with honey. The fruit trees have fruit, and the butterflies are flying around happily. Hummingbird put on her wedding gown, veil, and necklace. She was so happy that she forgot about being sad. She flew around making the most wonderful humming sound. The Great Spirit's heart was filled with joy. "Hummingbird, I hope you now see how special you are," he said. "Only you can make music with your wings." Okay. So now we will do our respond to reading, okay? So we will retell the story. Okay, so we will do a first, next, then, and last chart to retell the story. Okay, so let's make a chart. First, next, then, and last. Okay. We'll make our arrows too. So what happened first? First, the Great Spirit created the hummingbird, and the hummingbird could make sounds with her wings, right? First, the Great Spirit made the hummingbird. The hummingbird could make music with her wings. The animals liked her. all the animals liked her, right? Okay. So next, what happened? So next, Hummingbird wanted to get married but didn't have a wedding dress, so she was sad, right? So next, Hummingbird wanted to get married, but she was very plain and had no money to buy a wedding dress. She was sad and stopped making music, right? So next, the hummingbird wanted to get married, but she couldn't get a beautiful wedding dress, right? Because she was too plain. She wanted a beautiful wedding dress, but she had no money. So then she was sad. And she stopped making music. But then what happened? Then the animals made a beautiful wedding dress for a hummingbird, right? And then they brought her beautiful things for the wedding. Then the hummingbird and the other animals in the forest helped Hummingbird by making a beautiful dress and ceremony for her. Right? So the animals in the forest helped Hummingbird. So even though she didn't have money, every animal gave a little bit of something to help make a beautiful day for her. And then finally, we can say last, Hummingbird was happy and started music again. Right? So last, Hummingbird was happy and started making music again. Okay, so that is how we can retell the story. Okay, now let's answer some questions about the story. Okay, so I'm going to erase this side so we can see all of our questions. Okay, so let's move it over here. Okay, so our first question is, what do the animals do first to help Hummingbird? So the first way that the animals help Hummingbird is at the very beginning, right? So Hummingbird feels sad at the beginning because she doesn't have any colors. But the animals tell her that she can make beautiful music and that makes her feel happy, right? So that was the first way that they helped her. The first way that the animals helped Hummingbird was by telling her how much they loved the music she could make with her wings. That made her happy, right? So the first way that the animals helped Hummingbird was by telling her how much they loved the music she could make with her wings. That made her happy. Okay? So that's the first way they helped her. When you help someone, you don't always have to give them something. Sometimes you can just give them support. You can say, "Oh, you are so great," or "You are so smart." And that makes them feel better. So it's a good way to help them. Okay? Yeah. So let's see what our second question is. What happens after Hummingbird friends give her the gifts? So what happens? After her friends give her the gifts, Hummingbird is so happy. She was so happy that she forgot about being sad. She flew around making the most wonderful humming sound. So, after Hummingbird received the gifts, she was happy and began flying around and making music with her wings, right? So after Hummingbird received the gifts, she was happy and began flying around and making music with her wings. You can say it again. Okay. So that's our second question. Now let's go to our last question. Okay. Our last question. What kind of story is this? How do you know? Okay. So we know that this is a folk tale. Story. We know it is a folk tale because it has talking animals and teaches us a lesson, right? And so the lesson that it teaches us is that, first of all, everyone has something special about them, right? So the hummingbird could make music, and that was special. And so lots of people liked Hummingbird, but she didn't like herself because she didn't look nice. She thought she didn't look nice, right? So the animals, all of her friends helped her to see that she's beautiful, right? And to show her that she is special, just like everyone else. And that made her happy, right? So if you feel sad, it's important that you look at yourself and make yourself feel special or find something special about you. And it's also important that you tell your friends that you think they're special, right? Because maybe your friend doesn't feel happy, but if you tell your friend that you think they are special, they will be happier, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. Now let's go to our next story. Okay. Our next story our next story's genre is nonfiction. So that means that it is real life. And we compare texts. Read to find out more about hummingbirds. Okay, so we can see here that this hummingbird has a long beak, and it's using its beak to drink the nectar in the flower. So hummingbird wings beat very, very fast. Some hummingbirds beat their wings 60 to 80 times a second. If you count to one, see, one. Maybe I can move my finger 3 times or 4 times a second. A hummingbird can move their wing 80 times. You can do a little experiment. Try moving your finger and see how long it takes you to move your finger 80 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you count to 80, you can see how much time it takes. Hummingbirds can do that in 1 second. This quick movement makes a humming sound. This is why the bird is called a hummingbird. So here's a chart about hummingbirds. What they look like. Hummingbirds are very tiny. They perch and scoot sideways, but they can't walk or hop. They have strong bodies and long wings. Their bills are long, slender, and slightly curved. What they eat. Hummingbirds eat nectar. Nectar is like sugar water from plants. They do not eat seeds like other birds. How they fly. Hummingbirds can fly forward, straight up and down and backwards. They can hover or appear to stay in one place while beating their wings quickly. So they can go forwards or backwards or up or down. So they have a wide range of motion. They can move many different ways. Okay, now let's see. Make connections. Look at both selections. What did you learn about hummingbirds? So we learned that hummingbirds make a musical humming sound when they fly, right? We also learned that they beat their wings 60 to 80 times a second, and they don't eat seeds, right? They only eat nectar. Okay, so now let's go to our next page here. Focus on genre. Folktale. A folktale is a story based on traditions and customs. Folktales are told orally and often teach lessons. So folktales are told orally. That means folktales are usually told to people. They're not usually written down. Okay? What to look for. Hummingbird teaches us that we are special just the way we are. That animals talk and act like people. In real life, animals don't do these things. So that's how we can tell it's a folk tale, right? Because we learn a lesson that we are special, and we also see the animals talking, which they can't do in real life. So now it's your turn. Make up a story about why a different animal is special. What can it do? Draw a picture and write what makes it special. Okay, so now you can look at animals, or you can pick your favorite animal and say why it is special. So you can talk about why the giraffe has a long neck, or why the elephant has big ears, right? There's lots of different animals that you can talk about and explain why they are special. So take some time to do that this afternoon or morning or evening when you're looking at this, okay? Okay, now let's answer our last questions for the week. Okay. Okay. Our first question is how would you describe hummingbird? How would you describe the other characters in the story? So we can say hummingbird is not confident in her appearance, right? So hummingbird doesn't think she looks very good. So that's why she's not happy. Right? So she's not very confident. She doesn't believe in herself. So we can say that she's not confident in her appearance, and that makes her feel sad, right? Because she thinks she's ugly. And we can say the other animals are nice and friendly, and they want to help hummingbird be happy, right? So the other animals are nice and friendly, and they want hummingbird to be happy. So that's why they help her, right? So we can say that they are good friends. Yeah. So now our next question is, what happened first, then next, last in the story Hummingbird's Wings? So we already talked about this, right? We already did the first, next, and last chart. So I'll just do a short example of what happened, okay? Okay. First, Hummingbird was sad. She didn't she didn't look special. Then her friends helped a nice for her. And she realized she was special. Started flying again. Okay. So, first, Hummingbird was sad she didn't look special. Then her friends helped to make a nice dress for her. Then she realized she was special and started flying again, right? And making music. So, that is the first, then, next, last in the story. Now, let's talk about our last question. So our last question for today is, what other folk tales have you read about animals that help each other? What was the problem? How was it solved? So remember, we read a story earlier this week. If you know other stories, you can think of them, but I'm going to use the example from earlier this week, okay? So we read the story, Bat got his wings. He was small and couldn't fly. The birds helped him make wings and win the game, right? So we read about this story earlier this week. We read the story about how Bat got his wings. He was small and couldn't fly, so the animals didn't want him and the birds didn't want him. The birds helped him make wings, and he helped them win the game. So remember, the birds helped Bat make wings so he could fly? And then, when he was playing the game, Bat helped the birds get the last point to win the game, right? Yeah. So you can talk about other stories if you want, but that's all we have for today. All right. So now it's time for me to say bye-bye. Okay. We learned a lot this week about animals and how their characteristics and traits help them and how they're special. So now you can think about how you are special. Or you can look at other animals and find out how those animals are special, right? Okay. But now it is time for me to say goodbye. And I will see you next time. Okay? We'll learn more reading and more stories and more lessons next week. Okay? Bye-bye.